That was the point. I'd kind of accepted I was going to die.
On the 3rd of September 2021, 3 experienced divers descended onto the wreck of HMS Scylla off the coast of Cornwall. They entered the wreck, penetrating deep into the engine room on deck 3. But inside the silty, confusing corridors of the artificial reef, something went wrong.
After 10 minutes, we kind of got an actual issue now and we need to start figuring it out properly.
2 of those divers, tragically, never made it out. The 3rd diver, Adam Dent, managed to escape by the narrowest of margins. Forced to remove his equipment and squeeze through a tight gap as his air ran out. Today, for the first time, Adam sits down with me to break down exactly what happened in the dark, the decisions that saved his life, and the warning he wants every diver to hear. This is his story. That is a horrendous thing to happen to anybody, Adam, and I'm really grateful that you are here today to tell me and everybody else about, this.
So I started off in an evening dive, and the 3 of us known each other quite a few years at this point. Planned to go do some penetration on the Scylla, nothing specific in terms of what we was going to do, just that we was going to go look around and go inside it. Mark and me were both in side mount, Andy was in twin set, and them 2 were in dry suits and I was in a wetsuit.
And you were the kind of senior staff from the dive centre, really, weren't you?
Pretty much all instructors, Mark being a dive master, but we'd worked with a fair bit and was all confident in each other's abilities. Like, I trusted them. I knew I could leave them to do their own thing and it not be a problem. So we went out on the evening dive, got to the Scylla after the half an hour boat ride, got in, went down the line as usual, and first 10 minutes pretty uneventful. Went in level 2, had a look around, and then at the end of level 2 went down the stairs into level 3, and after that, a few minutes looking around, then we went inside the bulkhead inside level 3. So that's when we went inside I think it was the engine room it ended up being, but we didn't know that at the time. Yeah. And so I went in there, Andy at the front, then Mark, then me, went in a few corners, basically got to a dead end, turned around, and then as I'm going the way that I think is the exit, wherever that be, it just wasn't there. Whether I'd taken a wrong turn or whatever down the line, it wasn't there. So that was a problem I was facing at that point. 10 minutes of us all looking around together, it's pretty uneventful. I was kind of a little bit in denial in terms of, it's not going to be a problem. We'll have a joke about it when we get back up on top. Tell the other people, just be we did a really stupid thing. And that was pretty much it. But after 10 minutes, that was kind of when it dawned on me. I was like, okay, we kind of got an actual issue now, and we need to actually start figuring it out properly.
I mean, I guess for people who haven't dived the Scylla, it's probably worth making the point, isn't it, that the Scylla has been sunk for divers, so there is big cutouts in the vast majority of it, and therefore people routinely go into it in the expectation they're just going to come around the corner and find one of these massive cutouts. And I guess that's where you were.
I'll be honest, I wouldn't really say that, because I was very much aware, level 1 and 2, fantastic wreck. It's pretty much that you can't get lost, essentially, and if you do get lost, you will always find a cutout somewhere in there. And I was aware of level 3, I'd never been in there personally before, but I don't know, I guess for me, it was complacency. I thought, I was pretty experienced, I was pretty young at the time, kind of a thing of, at that age you do think you're invincible, really. And I didn't really appreciate how that situation could evolve. I was aware of it, but if you'd have said to me before that dive or before that day, you'd get in that situation, I'd be like, no, you're an idiot. I would never do that. And I think it's very easy to fall into that trap of thinking it will happen to me.
Yeah, for certain, absolute certain. So So you're in the wreck.
In the wreck.
You've been in there for 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You've kind of got this dawning realisation that you don't know how to get out.
Yeah. Probably look around for about 5 more minutes. Came to a hole in the ceiling, literally head size. Poked my head through and I could see one of the big cutouts mentioned in level 2. Obviously, very demoralising seeing an exit and not being able to actually get to it. But I just kind of put it out of your mind because there's no physical way that I could squeeze through that. Not a chance. Okay. So I had to go back down and think, okay, we've got to find somewhere else because that is not an option.
Are you still with the other 2 at this point?
Yeah, at that point it was all still together. After that is when I separated from them.
Okay.
That was a conscious choice to do that because in my head I was like, well, we're already lost. I can't get any more lost. Might as well have everyone, regardless of what them 2 was doing, I thought if I can look as well, it's another pair of eyes, going somewhere else rather than just following each other. Yeah. So that's when I made the decision. I went the opposite way, had a look around, searching for quite a while, didn't really find anything new that I could use, but it made me feel better actively pursuing an exit rather than just kind of being I don't even know how you describe it. Passive, yeah. Yeah. I was being the head of my own rescue rather than relying on anyone else.
Yeah, I guess in control of your own destiny, such as it was.
Yeah, absolutely. So probably another 10 minutes of looking around, doing that by myself. I came back across them. They clearly hadn't found an exit either, seeing as they were still in there with me. I did have a reel on me, so my thinking was that if I did find an exit, I could tie on and then go back in and try and find them if the situation allowed. Obviously that again didn't happen, but that was the thinking behind it.
Yeah. So
carried on. After I came across them, and I just carried on searching. They went their way, and that was the last time that I saw them. Probably another 10 minutes after that. I'd love to tell you what happened in between the 10 minutes, but it's really hard. It just kind of merges into one. It's just metal.
Yeah.
And there's not really much in between, so it does blend a lot. There are little bits that stick out to me, but so searching, and then I come across I don't know what you call them in ships. Just
a trapdoor or
trapdoor, kind of thing. Went down into that, and that just led to I assume what was a old cargo room.
Okay.
that had been emptied when the Scylla was gutted out and stuff. So it was just an empty room full of silt. But I knew no one else had been in there because it was completely undisturbed. So I was like, okay, I'm the first one in here. Looked around, because when you're going around the outside of the Scylla, there are cutouts on level 3, not very many, or on 4 I assume.
Yeah.
There's not very many, but I dived it enough to know there were some.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, I'll take my chance, and literally anything at that point was an option, you know. Went in there, there's absolutely nothing, which was again it was quite hard to kind of putting your hope in something, don't work out, and I think that was the point where in my head I'd kind of accepted I was going to die. I was monitoring my air the entire time, and I think at that point, the 70-minute dive, I probably was 40 minutes into it. I was watching very, very conscious of my air.
Of course.
And that was the point where I was like, yeah.
Jesus. I mean, that is an awful, to have that kind of realisation, you know. And what were you, 20, 21?
24 at the time.
Oh, you're 24 at the time, yeah. But I mean, still incredibly young, really. That is a horrendous thing for anybody to have to experience.
And again, like I said, I'd accepted that. Yeah, I was trying. I'd accepted, like, going through the stages, stages of grief. Like, I was in denial, then acceptance. And although I accepted it, I still wanted to carry on. Like, I thought to myself, I've got two options here. I can either sit somewhere nice and just run out of air, or I can carry on searching, and one of them options is going to at least give me a chance.
Yeah.
Regardless of how slim I felt it was at the time. I was like, when I run out of air and it comes to that point in the dive, I'd rather go out knowing I'd tried everything. Like,
yeah. I know exactly what you mean. You want to go out kicking and screaming rather than passively. And I get that.
So when I was in that room as well, I hadn't landed into that room either, because I was like, well, I'm already lost. But trying to get back out of that room, because of how the bubbles had gone onto the roof, it was like reflecting a lot. So it actually made it quite hard to find that exit as well, which sucked. But after like a minute, I found it. Came out of that one, and at that point, it was like a full brownout within the actual compartment was in beforehand. I've got my umbilical in one hand, and I'm literally just touch feeling along. I can only see what my hand is touching with the torch.
So the impact of you and the other people has just kicked up the vis so badly.
It was so small in there, like no matter how careful he was, it was going to happen. Like, it wasn't to do with like bad technique or people being like panicking or anything like that. It was just the sheer fact of like 3 human beings being in that tight of a space. It was going to happen. And anyway, so that was crawling along, and I didn't have any gloves on at the time, and it absolutely shredded my hands, which was very much not really thinking about at the time, but post dive, it came in. It was a weird like reminder, kind of like for a week afterwards. So yeah, I'm like feeling along, and that was probably so I came out of the room, and I did that for like 10 minutes of just pure touch, trying to find anything. I was again looking at my air, watching it go down and down and down. At this point, I had probably like 20 bar on each cylinder, and I was constantly trying to fight my body with the adrenaline, because
your body wants to breathe quickly.
My heart, like trying to keep it was like there was a battle between my brain and my body, because I was so aware of it, but obviously the physiological reaction was going to happen regardless. So I was just trying to stay so mindful of it, because the minute with task loading, I concentrated on anything for a split second. When as soon as I went back to concentrating on my breathing, I'd be like, and then you have to catch yourself. Really, really slow deep breath in, ultra slow deep breath out, and that, it was hard. It was hard to like keep your composure, but like I was so aware that like if I didn't keep my composure, that's when I'd die. Like, because time was buying me the ability to look more. So constantly fighting that, like the mental battle in your head, and just trying to carry on doing that. So yeah, at a certain point, SPGs read the air that's left in the cylinder. So I knew, right, I've got a couple of breaths left in here. And with side mount, you change every roughly 20 bar. So I was like, okay, switch over to my left one, and just didn't look at it, because I didn't want to know how much was left in there. So my thinking was, okay, I'll keep breathing off this one until it goes, switch back to this one for the remaining few breaths that are in there. And then once that's gone, I'll breathe from my wing and just get CO2 hit and pass out rather than drown, because I didn't really fancy that, to be honest. It was a weird thing in my mind as well, where I said about like, wanting to look at myself rather than, being with everyone else. there's also like a thought in the back of my mind that I didn't really want to be with anyone if I drown. Like I kind of wanted to be on my own, which is weird, but
yeah,
I don't know. Like I just didn't want to share that experience almost. I just rather deal with it by myself rather than, obviously, like if you run out of air, then makes it a question of like you have to share their air, and then are you taking away their time that they could have potentially done something else with? So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna deal with this on my own, and I'll be fine.
Interesting, the kind of thoughts that go through your head when you're in this situation. I mean, it seems like you approached it in an incredibly rational way, which is kind of odd. Odd, but kind of, maybe not odd. Maybe that's the wrong word. Maybe kind of, I don't know, unusual. I'm not sure everybody would have reacted in that way.
I agree. I think I'll talk about it afterwards, but like one of my friends like said like you did everything for you, correct? Because you're still here. Like if I hadn't have thought rationally about it, then we probably wouldn't be having this conversation.
For certain.
Yeah, a lot go through your head when you've got 40 minutes by yourself underwater in a wreck. So I'd switched over to the other one and was like carrying on. And
so did you have a particular strategy at this point? Were you just continuing to feel against the wall?
Yeah, pretty much. If I was feeling against the wall, I remember I was on the left-hand side of the wall heading down, and I don't really know where I was inside. I was just like, I'm just going to keep feeling until I find maybe like somewhere. Like I didn't have a particular plan to what I was looking for, just looking for anything.
Yeah.
And at that point, all the silt around me is like just refracting, so it just looks like a whole lot of brown around me, apart from what I can see in my hand. But for whatever reason, I noticed like a essentially a black blob above me.
Okay.
So I looked up and I was like, "What's that?" So I shone my torch, and where essentially what it was a manhole cover sized hull that had been cut out, but with 2 bars put across it.
Okay.
And I think that was either to deter people going in, or it was like an access point used for gutting out the Scylla, and then that was welded up and been like, okay, that's just there. It was just something. I don't think it was part of the original ship.
Okay.
And I looked at it and I was like, oh, that's weird. So I went up to it, put my head through, and then there was an extremely similar cutout of level 2 that I'd seen earlier. Whether it's the same one or not, I have absolutely no idea. But they all look exactly the same regardless. And with it being at the point it was, I was like, well, I've literally got nothing left to lose. So I unclipped my cylinders, push both of them up, and then just started climbing through it as best I could. I
mean, you're quite, you don't mind me saying, you're quite a well-built lad. And I've seen similar things on the Scylla, and they're not particularly wide.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine what it was like trying to get through.
Yeah, it was... As I was going through as well, I'd forgot to take, like, just obviously stress of it, clearly, but like I still had my necklace on.
Okay.
The necklace of the regulator, so my other regulator was still around my neck, and I'd forgotten to take it off to obviously get a smaller profile. And as I was going through, that got caught, and I was like, what am I getting stuck on? And it took me like, it felt like ages, but it was probably like 2 seconds to be like, okay, that's fine. I'll just go back down, take it off, go back through. But it felt kind of an absolute eternity. Got to waist height, managed to get like there and then like push out. At that point, I was like, okay, I'm out. I still need to get to the surface because I do not have any clue how long I've got left here. So I as quickly as I could, didn't bother re-strapping them to me. The only thing that I did was plug the inflation cylinder into my wing. That was the only thing that I did. Scooped them up and just made for the exit as fast as I could. And then once I got clear enough from the wreck, just fully inflated. I was like, you could, like, one of my old instructors who was teaching me like my open water and stuff, she always said, you can fix bent, you can't fix dead. So I was like, at that point I've been at 20 meters constantly flat for 73 minutes, and I was like, I don't care about getting a bend, like way better chance. So fully inflated, shot up, just trying to make sure I'm breathing out as much as possible, like while I'm going up, like breathing out, like the smallest little breath in, breathing out. Got to the surface, and then immediately like looking for the boat, because I knew we was past the 1 hour limit, so like they would have known something was wrong. So looking for the boat, saw it, obviously trying to hold the cylinders in one hand, waving with the other to try and get like distress. It must have been less than 10 seconds easy, but it again felt like an eternity, like trying to get their attention. It just felt like, I don't know, just like they just wouldn't see me. Obviously that, not the truth, but like in the moment, that is, yeah. Anyway.
So tell me, what does it feel like that moment when you hit the surface when you hit the surface and you've got yourself out, and you know, I guess at this point you know you're going to live? Honestly,
my brain wasn't thinking at that point still. It was still purely going on reactions. Like I didn't feel any relief. I didn't feel like it was still so in like fight or flight mode that
so you just, the adrenaline's still going.
Yeah.
You're just in that sequence of things rather than
things are just happening to me. It's not like, at that point it was also felt very much out of my control, like everything, because as soon as you're on the lift, like I had like the other divers that were there on the day, obviously that wasn't diving with us, they didn't know what had happened either. So as soon as I get on the boat, people like taking my kit off me, like getting me sat down, like do you know what I mean? And like, I mean, I remember coming up the lift and then like trying to shout to them like what had happened, like, oh, they're still down there, and then like the skipper put in the mayday call and like everything else like that. I don't know what happened on the boat beforehand as well.
Yeah.
But from that, like from my point of view, like immediately got on there, told them what happened, and then that was kind of when like everything kind of just, it wasn't down to me anymore. Like
you kind of handed responsibility over.
Yeah. And then I think we was looking for the bubbles. We found the bubbles.
Yeah.
That went on for about 10 more minutes. And we was just like circling around the bubbles and waiting for the lifeguard to come. But obviously the lifeguard, like, it was just like they knew it was a missing person, but I think they'd already been told it was diver as well, but I don't think they was aware either. Or what can the lifeguard do? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, they're
in there, like...
Yeah, the lifeboat doesn't have the capacity or the training or whatever. I mean, was there any suggestion anybody on the boat was going to go back in?
Someone actually did go back in to try and look for them, but I don't... Well, they couldn't find them. And it was like... That was after a dive, so there was limited on air.
Yeah.
There wasn't rec trained whatsoever. There was very little, unfortunately, they would have been able to do.
Yeah.
But I think at least they tried. Like, you know, I think that made everyone feel like they was at least trying to contribute to something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And then, I mean, I guess on the boat, you go through this process of kind of like hope that they're going to pop up.
Yeah.
And then a kind of realisation.
Yeah, watching the bubbles and just kind of hoping like there's a surface. And like they've managed to find somewhere else. Somewhere like me.
Yeah.
And then seeing that not happen was pretty, like, I don't know how to describe it, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody's vocabulary is kind of equipped to deal with, you know, those kind of things, but I can imagine that it would kind of, it would all of a sudden get very, very somber on the boat.
Yeah.
And I guess, you know, I think it's useful to know what happens in these situations. So you put somebody else back in who went down with whatever 70 or 80 bar or however much they had left. to have a look. They obviously couldn't find anything, came up. Would the lifeboat arrive shortly afterwards?
Yeah, one of the medics jumped on board
Yeah.
because they knew that I'd probably, well, I didn't end up having any DCS symptoms.
Yeah.
Thankfully.
Had you missed any stops?
Well, my computer was screaming at me on the way up, so...
But for a rapid ascent or for missed deco or both?
Both.
Yeah, okay.
I was well into deco at that point. I can't really remember how much, but I was very much in there. And yeah, rapid ascent as well. So they got me on oxygen. The lifeboat medic came on board, went back with us into the harbour. I went through the entire 6 litre cylinder on the way back in. I felt fine, as in physically, I wasn't having any joint pains or nausea or any of the usual symptoms you'd imagine having. So that was at least one good thing. That I was okay, maybe I'm not too bad. Got there, police were there. Some of the other people, government agencies were there. It was a bit of a blur, to be honest. Just people talking at me, got taken into the dive centre. The police took a extremely quick statement from me, as in just kind of, I was diving, 2 people were there. Got driven to DDRC, which is the chamber up in Derriford.
Yep.
They basically did an assessment on me and said, look, it's up to you. If you want to go back home, monitor symptoms, and if you feel anything, come back in, or we can just put you in the chamber for good measure and do that. And I was like, yeah, put me in the chamber. Okay. Yeah. I'd rather not take any risk with it. Regardless of whether I felt okay or not, I'd rather no. Yeah. So went in there, did a 2-hour profile, dry dive, just 18 meters on helium and oxygen, coming back up, the usual kind of stuff you'd imagine with a dry chamber. And then got sent home. And
what's that like when you get home?
It was a bit unreal, to be honest. Everything just kind of, I don't know. It's really hard to describe, but it was. It's just things happening to me. I just kind of. I was
still be in shock at this point, I would have thought.
I don't know if shock would be the right word, but it was more just I'd say disbelief more than anything else. And everyone was doing everything for me. So I got driven, I got given some food, I got put to bed potentially, and then it was just kind of just stuff was happening to me, and I was just along for the ride.
So kind of something like an out of body type.
Yeah, kind of. You still I think just processing in your head,
Wow. Okay. And I guess what happened? Where did things go from there?
It's right. Give me a second. I'm just gonna collect my thoughts on it. But it was really strange.
Oh mate, I can imagine. I've been not the same, but I've been involved in similar things where you have all this stuff happening, then all of a sudden stuff stops happening. Yeah. And it's like.
Yeah, it's really weird.
It's
So from there, it's really hard to try and think back specifically to what happened, because again, if it was quite a drawn out period between, unfortunately, recovering the bodies. Yeah. That took a while.
When were you aware that they were dead? When did you know they were dead?
How so? Sorry.
So obviously, I guess you were in the wreck, you thought you were going to die. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you were a survivor. Yeah. And you must have had the hope that the guys were going to be able to come out and everything. But at some point you must have realised that hope had finished.
Well, when the bubble stopped, that's when I knew. Yeah. I'd love to imagine that,
Yeah.
It was hard to you got that hurt, but also the realistic side of it, Yeah.
Okay. Man, that is that's a tough thing to have to go through for anybody. So I guess I know this is a difficult thing to do, but looking at that incident and what happened to you, if you were to say to some people out there who are watching this, these are the things that I wish I'd done or I wish I'd known before that dive, and if I was doing it again, these are the things that I would maybe do a bit differently. What are those things?
I would just say complacency. Like it can happen to literally anyone, no matter how experienced you think you are. Like the minute you relax or don't take everything quite seriously, maybe you should, that's when things start going wrong. Like people know the Swiss cheese model. Like just because on the last dive you did something stupid and nothing bad happened doesn't mean the next dive or 10 dives or 100 dives after that you do a similar thing and like all the holes lined up and then something happens. I'd also say like just keeping fit is like a genuine thing for divers that I think is quite underemphasized.
Okay. Like
the only reason I could have a good amount of air consumption was because I kept myself fit. Like if I was any less fit than I was, then I don't think that would have played into how things turned out. And just staying calm when shit does hit the fan. Like it really is important, and it can be inside. You progress to your level of training. You never rise to the event.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's a really interesting point. I think nothing is ever improved really by panicking, is it? So and I think listening to your story, something that comes away from me is you seem to have been, even though you were in this horrendous situation, you seem to have continued to act rationally, and you were making decisions that were going to try and help you. And obviously it worked out really well for you. And we don't know what the other guys were doing, but it does seem that is something that's helped you. I mean, the big thing that people will obviously focus on in this incident is, do you think you should have lined in and lined out?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's so easy to say that now.
Oh, for certain. I mean, I've been inside the Scylla. I've not been in that deck, but I have been in other bits of the Scylla, and there are parts where you can line out, and there's parts where you need to, and there's parts where you don't need to.
So easy to go. I mean, I said to myself afterwards, and I was like thinking about it after it happened. I was like, why didn't I?
Yeah.
Like, and that's always something I like play in my mind. Like, if I'd done that, it probably wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
But there's a million one things that I could say. If I did this, if I did that, and I've tried to accept the situation for what it was. Like post incident, I had quite a lot of survivor's guilt, I would say.
Okay.
It was quite hard to deal with. I'd say that like for a week I really beat myself up for it.
Okay.
Like it was pretty hard.
Yeah.
I had some pretty horrendous thoughts, to be honest. I was like, why did I get to survive when they didn't?
Yeah. No, it's my understanding is that's a really common thing, and it's completely irrational, obviously, but it is. It's also totally natural, I think.
I mean, one of the family members, Mark's wife,
Yeah.
like she sent me a message afterwards, and that actually helped loads.
Okay.
She kind of said, like they wouldn't want you beating yourself up. Like it's just they loved doing what they did, and I hopefully don't think they'd have any regrets. But yeah, she took like when she sent me that message, she took a massive weight off my shoulders, like because I very much did blame myself.
Yeah, no, that's a really selfless thing for her to do, I think, and it must have been quite difficult for her as well. But nice and good for you that she did. So
yeah,
yes.
I think it's really important as well to mention. Like I had a really good support network. Like I had a lot of friends, and like the entire kind of diving community at the time kind of like really showed up for me.
Yeah.
Like it's like three very specific people I'd like to say thank you to, which is like Addy, Sam and Beth. Like they were just there for me in like a massive crisis. They just let me talk, and like they asked like questions and stuff like that, but they kind of let me process it at my own speed, which I think really, really helped, because I think without that I probably would have had massive, like a lot of PTSD.
Okay.
Like, and I was looking into it kind of afterwards, like trying to understand like what causes PTSD and what doesn't. And I think there's some study that said, like, the more that people talk about it and are open with it, the less likely you are to develop it. Like, it can still happen, obviously.
Yeah.
I'm not saying if you get PTSD then you've done something wrong, but being able to express that to people who know diving, I didn't have to like explain everything to them. They already kind of had a base understanding there. I could just talk about the situation, and it was just there to listen.
Yeah. Okay.
And that massively helped with me.
Okay.
For sure.
Yeah. No. Well, it is good that you have those support networks around you, and for people who don't necessarily know who those three people you just mentioned are, well done to all of them. They'll probably hope, they may listen to this. They may, hopefully they'll appreciate how much of a difference that they made to you. And I guess, I think one of the so let's look at kit as well. I'm not a side mount diver. I've always been a little bit rude about side mount divers, if I'm honest. But it strikes me that this is one of the, an example of where that is a super.
Yeah, like you said,
thing.
with the million and one things I could have changed. Like, I think if I wasn't in a wetsuit, I wouldn't have been able to squeeze through that gap for sure.
Okay.
Like, I had quite a few tears in my wetsuit, and I was like, with an undersuit on and a dry suit, I'd reckon I'd been able to fit.
Okay.
The fact that I was in a side mount, I could push it through quite easily. Massive benefit to that. Like, the fact I had an umbilical with me and it wasn't going to die. Like, after a lot of high intensity use, the million and one things for sure.
It's interesting to see. Those kind of things are, I guess things that you start to think about later on. So moving forward now, though, a lot of people I think would have given up diving at this point. But you still dive, don't you?
Yeah, when I can. Like, it's not too often these days because I'm quite busy with work. But yeah, I still love it. I still do it as much as I can. I kind of view it like diving isn't what killed them. Like, sure, we was diving when it happened, but it was a lot of other factors. It's like, I guess if you went in a car crash, like, hopefully you won't give up driving necessarily. Like,
yeah,
I don't know if that's right way to explain it, but I guess that's how I kind of view it, really. And I don't think they'd necessarily want me to give up diving. Like, just, do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, I get that. Have you gone back and dived the Scylla?
No, I haven't. I would.
Okay.
But I just haven't had a chance yet.
Okay.
I think that would be a weird dive, but maybe cathartic. Like,
I don't know. I mean, different people respond to things in different ways, don't they? You seem really rational and logical, and not necessarily as emotional maybe as some people would be. So I don't know. So it's kind of interesting. I guess, is there anything else that you think is worth kind of, you'd either like to tell people or something? In fact, I'll tell you what, I've got one thing that I think is worth mentioning, which is that I didn't know you at the time of the incident, but I had the opportunity to read the letter that you wrote, or the account that you wrote shortly afterwards. And I got somebody showed me that to me at the time, and actually I'm sure that isn't why you did it, but it does seem to me like a really useful thing to do.
Yeah, so one of my friends, he actually told me, like, write it as soon as you can.
Yeah.
Because you'll either start misremembering, your brain will fill in the blanks, and the longer that you wait, the less you can kind of rely on the information your brain's telling you. So I think it is very, it's really beneficial, like, if anything like that traumatic does happen to you, like, you can, like, write it down kind of like the next day when it happens, whenever, just kind of as soon as possible, because your brain will play tricks on you 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have the same thing with things that have happened to me. It's difficult to remember. So really good advice, and really impressive that you did that. Complete aside, would you mind if I published it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. Adam, I'd just like to say thank you on behalf of everybody who is going to listen to this, because it's been absolutely incredible and horrifying and useful as well, I think, to hear what happened to you and the takeaways that you've had from it and all those kind of things.
I was going to say, I was dubious about doing this, but then I thought to myself, like, if it saves even like one person or like stops one accident happening, then it's worth it, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, is that people don't talk about stuff that happens to them. Maybe they know, and a small number of people know, actually, the community benefits if people share this. So, I can't imagine it was a particularly easy thing for you to do. So I would just like to thank you for coming on here and doing that. Thank you very much.
No worries.